Hello bookworms, welcome to the Chattering Magpie. In this video, we kickstart a new series where we go over some of my favorite light novel characters as I color my favorite illustration of them. Today, I'm starting with the fabulously outlandish Hartmut. So, who is Hartmut? Here's a quick rundown. He is an arch-noble of the Lazy Gang faction, and his most defining characteristic is his incredible devotion to Rozemyne. He is said to be the amalgamation of Justice's peculiarity and Eckhart's fanatic loyalty. He first appeared in Part 3, Volume 3, when he introduced himself to Rozemyne. Yet, there is an extra side story of him from even before that time that took place in Part 3, Volume 1, and is featured in an untranslated short story collection. Additionally, he briefly makes an appearance in the as of yet untranslated Part 3 manga. His birth season is winter, and coincidentally, his hair and eyes kind of match his birth season color. He has red hair and orange or amber colored eyes. We are not sure what exactly are all of his attributes at the time of his baptism, but he does have at least light, though he does not have darkness. He is the youngest of 3 sons. His mother is Ottilie, Rozemyne's attendant, and his father is 𝙏𝙝𝙖𝙣𝙠, one of Florencia's scholars. He is 4 years older than Rozemyne and is a 5th-year apprentice scholar at the time when Rozemyne first enters the Royal Academy. Interestingly enough, he is the only character in the light novel that we've seen kiss or get a kiss on screen. He even has an illustration. He is now engaged to Clarissa, a Dunkelfelder arch-noble apprentice scholar. As an art-noble adopted into the archducal family, Rozemyne must choose competent attendants, scholars, and guard knights to surround herself with. These are her closest allies who are meant to guard, attend, and help her carry out her many day-to-day tasks. In her first year at the Royal Academy, she was tasked with picking out her retainers from a list of pre-vetted candidates. Among those that she chose was Hartmut. Hartmut's defining characteristic is his obsession for Rozemyne. He praises her as a saint, not only to her face, but to anyone else who will listen. He is determined to spread the tales of her sainthood, going so far as to tell Rozemyne, "I wish for everyone to consider you as much of a saint as I do, and to that end, I will spare no expense." Hartmut is a friendly young man. He smiles frequently and seems to be a very cheerful young man. Rozemyne remarks that his way of speaking makes him sound exactly like Eustace. However, unlike Eustace, he is too tall and his shoulders are too broad to successfully pull off cross-dressing, like Eustace usually does when he needs to infiltrate women's functions to gather intel. Additionally, his noticeably red hair is not suited to stealthy reconnaissance. His uncle is 𝙏𝙝𝙖𝙣𝙠. Leonor is his cousin, but he is also distantly related to Rozemyne, Brunhilde, Cornelius, and even Traugott, as they all have the same great-grandfather, Emeritus, the old Count Lazygang. He has many abilities. As an apprentice scholar, Hartmut has studied magic circles, magic tools, and potions. He earned very good grades in his class on magic circles. Hartmut is so good at gathering information to the extent that even Ferdinand offered him a position as his retainer. He is also skilled at spreading rumors and misinformation to improve Ehrenfest's and Rozemyne's political standing. He is also a good, though strict, teacher. Hartmut frequently delegates tasks to the younger apprentice scholars, corrects their errors, and coaches them on how to respond to queries from other duchies. He is strict, but much kinder than Ferdinand. In fact, when poor Philine cries because Ferdinand glared at her at the temple and told her to redo her work because it did not meet his expectations, both he and Damiel had consoled her. While Hartmut gives the impression of a friendly young man who loves talking to people, internally he is sharp and calculating, maybe even a bit cynical. He calculates people's worth by their usefulness to Rozemyne and expects his fellow scholar retainers, even his own fiancée from another duchy, to make themselves as useful to his mistress as possible. He is not averse to resorting to violence against those who would offend Rozemyne or who seek to stand in her way. His most defining characteristic, however, is that he is incredibly devoted to Rozemyne and is willing to do whatever he can to most effectively support her. Despite his eccentric attitude, Hartmut is very competent. When he joined Rozemyne at the temple and received Ferdinand's rigorous training, he was able to handle it pretty well. It is later said that it took 3 people giving it their all to manage what Hartmut could easily finish on his own. Hartmut knows how to work well with other people. In fact, he has learned to be less arrogant while working with Rozemyne's commoner associates and temple attendants. Of course, part of that lesson involved Rozemyne crushing him just a tiny bit. But since then, he made sure to be on good terms with the people that she is closest to. The orphanage, Hartmut explains, the workshop, the lower city merchants, these are Lady Rozemyne's arms and legs, and if you do not acquaint yourself with the temple in its entirety, then you will not be of any use to her. Prior to meeting Rozemyne, he had little interest in anything. Even Ehrenfest faction politics were insignificant affairs to him. He was described by his family members as exceedingly uncaring and infinitely stubborn. Additionally, as an archnoble, he placed great emphasis on his and his family's status. When he learned that his mother was asked to serve a young archnoble girl, he was upset, believing it to be an insult to his family's equivalent status, especially since Rozemyne was born out of a mednoble woman. However, after seeing Rozemyne give a blessing to the crowd at her noble baptism, Hartmut was deeply moved and he became convinced that she was a true saint. The event marked a turning point in his life. This once uncaring boy found something worth devoting himself to. It was such a dramatic change that even his friends and family got quite shocked at his sudden burst of enthusiasm. Hartmut devoted himself to spreading legends of her sainthood to as many people as possible at the Royal Academy, so that by the time Rozemyne started her first year there, her reputation as a saint had, for better or worse, preceded her. Hartmut was a very diligent intel gatherer for Rozemyne at the Royal Academy. He was very popular, especially with the girls, to the point that, in a fit of jealousy, a student from the Duchy of 𝙏𝙗𝙖𝙠 launched a small projectile his way, which ended up hitting Rozemyne instead and activated one of her protection charms. Still, of all the girls at the Royal Academy, Clarissa from Dunkelfelder, another arch-noble apprentice scholar from Dunkelfelder, specifically chose him and proposed to him in a very unorthodox way. Still, he decided to go along with the girl's scheme because of her enthusiasm for the Saint of Ehrenfest. In fact, they are so overcome with admiration over Rozemyne that any time they should have spent together canoodling or being romantic at the famous goddess of time gazebo, they spend talking about Rozemyne and her saintly deeds. However, he is not so attached to the idea of marrying that he wouldn't break his engagement for Rozemyne's sake. When he volunteered to become the high priest and enter the temple until Rozemyne came of age, Rozemyne was worried that Clarissa and her family would be shocked about it, but he replied that if his fiancée had a problem with his decision, he could easily break it off with her. And this was a source of concern to Rozemyne, who notes that in all of Jürgensmith, only Clarissa would be willing to marry an oddball like him. There are very few things that interest Hartmut. One is seeing Rozemyne's blessings and experiencing her saintly deeds firsthand. And the other is to be of more use to Rozemyne. He wants her to rely on him more and more. To this end, he learns what he needs to learn to become a tax scholar so that he can accompany her during the Harvest Festival. He attends the Archduke Conference as her scholar representative to negotiate on book and story deals with the greater duchies. He takes over as head priest in the temple when Ferdinand leaves, and is instrumental in helping Rozemyne make a protective amulet chock full of protective circles for Ferdinand. As head priest, he manages the temple affairs as well as the blue robes with aplomb during the winter of Rozemyne's third year at the academy, doing everything in his power to ensure that she can spend an entire school term uninterrupted at the academy. Yet, for all of his loyalty and all of his competence, Ferdinand does warn Rozemyne about Hartmut. He is your retainer. His loyalty is unquestionable, at the very least, so he will make for a strong ally if you use him properly. And if I handle him improperly, disaster. I experienced as much with 𝙏𝙗𝙖𝙠. Some bookworms have noted that Hartmut is to Rozemyne what 𝙏𝙗𝙖𝙣𝙠 is to 𝙏𝙗𝙖𝙣. Fortunately, Rozemyne is not a power-hungry psychopath, but that doesn't mean that Hartmut wouldn't do whatever it takes to make her the next 𝙏𝙏. There was, after all, a time that she made a thoughtless remark about wanting the Duchy of Arensback because it has a sea and the sea has fish. Of all the people present there, he was the only one who was not scandalized by her remark and, in fact, said that it was a great idea. Additionally, when he heard that Will had caused harm to Rozemyne at her baptism, he was determined to tear him down and make Rozemyne the next 𝙏𝙏. His disdain toward Wilfrid was so great that when he was offered a post as one of his retainers, he immediately turned it down in favor of becoming Rozemyne's scholar instead. After the White Tower incident, he told his mother that Rozemyne should have kicked Wilfrid down and become the Archduchess herself, maintaining that he would have crushed Wilfrid into the dirt had he been Rozemyne's retainer. Then advised his mother on what to tell Rozemyne. Utterly refused to pass the information along and said that Rozemyne thought only of raising others up, not dragging them down, and advised him to support her in positive ways instead. So far, Rozemyne has been able to talk him down from doing anything rash, but will Rozemyne be able to keep him under control always? Or will he cause trouble as he endeavors to be of more and more use to her in the future? With Ferdinand gone, Rozemyne lost one of her biggest pillars of support. Will she turn to Hartmut and fulfill his wish to rely on him in the same way that she relied on Ferdinand? And now that Hartmut has graduated and is no longer at the Royal Academy, how will she and the rest of her apprentice scholars fare without Hartmut's guidance? Will Hartmut always idolize Rozemyne? What if he learns about the truth of her past? Would he become disillusioned and disappointed that the saint he worshipped all this time was only a commoner? What are you guys' thoughts about Hartmut's character? Are you a fan of Hartmut's? What do you think of his growth and character development? What are some instances of Hartmut's weirdness that I did not mention here? Be sure to share in the comments below, as well as tell me who I should talk about next. Finally, I'd like to give a special shout out to Brandon, who is a Zent level supporter of mine over on my Ko-fi. Brandon, you are a ruby. Rubies represent passion, prosperity, and because they are thought to have protective properties, they have been used throughout history in protective charms. Because ruby's hue is close to the color of blood, the gemstones also represent vitality and vigor. You imbue your reading with such great vitality anytime you read Hartmut at our read-alongs that it just makes the reading so much more fun. Thank you so much for your support. Hope you all enjoyed this video. See you on the next one. Bye bye.